Morning. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us this morning. I know that other people will likely join us as we proceed. I'm Deb Newman, President and CEO of the Bangor Region Chamber of Commerce, and this is our virtual early bird breakfast. Early bird used to be earlier when we were in person. Now that we're Zooming, it's more of an early bird brunch for many of us, and that's okay too. I want to thank our sponsor. There we go, Eaton Peabody. You see that? Who have been with us and supported our early bird breakfast for many years and continue to do so. And we are extremely grateful for their support. I want to recognize joining me this morning for this event is Shelley Sund, our Director of Marketing and Events, who is producing our event this morning. Shelley will be fielding any questions that you have throughout the presentation, so please ask them, and then she'll get those to me and I'll ask them of our panelists joining us. If you have questions, use the Q&A function. If you're on Facebook Live, welcome. You can put a question in the comment or private message us and we will ask it. We're very excited about today's topic. We hear from many of our members and many of you in the business community that you really want to engage more in what's happening in Augusta. You call us with concerns about bills, interest in bills, things you want to support, things you want to oppose. You want to learn more, you want to do more, but you're busy and you don't know how to do it. So that's what we're going to talk about today is how do you, as a busy person, perhaps a business owner, we're all busy, engage in the policy-making process, and why is it so important to do so? It can be intimidating. It can seem really daunting to, for example, testify and to testimony and to testify on a bill. Simon is going to take us through that process. I'm excited to learn as well as we go through the session this morning. But let's kick it off with Dana Connors. Dana, welcome. It's good to see you as always.
Thank you, Deb.
Dana is the president of the Maine State Chamber, and we're very fortunate as chambers in the state of Maine to have a very close partnership with Dana Connors and his amazing team, especially when it comes to a focus on advocacy. Many of us who are regional and even smaller chambers, we just don't have the capacity to have an advocacy team. So the great team at the state chamber keeps us informed in terms of what's happening in Augusta on a weekly basis, so we can then get that information out to our membership. So Dana, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for Simon and I to be here today, actually. You have teed up an incredibly important issue that it's a pleasure for us to be able to share information, but also encouragement. And let me start there by saying, and this is a takeaway that I would want everybody on this webinar, our early bird breakfast, to understand, and that is there is no substitute for the value that each and every one of you bring to the legislative process. I cannot stress enough your importance, your impact when it comes to issues, not just issues that are Bangor region focus, but issues that are statewide focus. As Deb has said, we take incredible pride in the chamber family, so to speak, because we recognize that the voice of many are much stronger than any one of us, but each and every one of you have a place that is of extreme importance. So that will be the major takeaway, in addition to having Simon share with you how to make it as easy as possible. Deb said it well. It can be intimidating. It shouldn't be intimidating, but it can be. And we hope to put that aside and show you how it can work for you and open the door to any future questions today or future that may stand in the way of your participation. I need to make 2 points before I go further. Deb mentioned it, and I want to reinforce it. We know how busy you are. And we know how discouraging it is because I've seen it and heard the concerns expressed by business community that come to Augusta to testify in person. The actual hearing scheduled to start at 1. It doesn't. It's later. You're given 3 minutes to speak, but 5 o'clock comes and you still haven't been heard and you have to drive back home. And maybe you're not even going to be heard. That can be discouraging. It's not a prevailing practice, but it only happens once or twice and you're discouraged by it. But even though the COVID has brought us a lot of issues and concerns, the actual Zoom access that every committee operates with today takes away that time factor, that travel necessity, and makes it easier. And what Simon is going to share with you will make it even easier still. So we know how busy you are, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to spend the time with the regional chamber here and the Bangor area to help you better understand and to make sure that you're not concerned with the process. The other thing I want to say is it sounds perhaps like I'm asking you to do our job for us. Well, Deb mentioned it, and I take great pride in being able to say that we have 3 full-time, and then Simon, amongst his other many duties, will also take the reins, particularly when it comes to workforce. But the 3 that we have, Peter Gore, who's been to your hot stove just recently, he does HR issues. Linda Caprera does the tax and appropriations, and Ben Lucas, a new addition, has the energy issues, the environmental issues, and some education issues, the 3 E's. I take great pride in what their ability is. But the COVID reinforces something that I think we all need to be aware of, and that is our success over time depends upon relationships. Relationships that, well, Peter Gore and I have been here for 29 years, and in that time you develop some relationships. You have the access because you know where they are in the Capitol, you go to visit them, you build relationships develop into trust, and trust is so important when you are setting forth your positions. Facts are important, but so aren't relationships. And that comes to your value. And that is, don't ever underestimate the importance that you have with any relationship with a legislature in your region. The fact that you can reach out and you can call or you can send something is powerful. And you don't even have to know the person, but you need to know that that person represents you in Augusta. And as Deb said, and I repeat, you would be surprised how few people do reach out and how important it is when you do reach out. I've more than once made a pitch to someone to have them say, but Dana, I haven't heard from anybody back home, so I'm going to take your word for it or something of that nature. Again, I reinforce, you have an incredibly important role. I don't want to speak too much longer, but I do want to point out a couple of things, which also makes, in these 2 years, your role is important at any time in the legislative process. But in this period of COVID that we hope is winding down, but we're not sure of that, is the fact that your presence, your outreach, your involvement is more critical than ever. Only to remind you in this respect, so far we're 2 months, we're entering almost the second full month, and we've got about 2 months left in the process. Every committee is operated by way of Zoom, and you can either present over Zoom or you can submit testimony, and we'll talk about that. The legislature as a full body, both bodies, have not been in session, but only at this point 2 times in January. And the second time was to sustain the governor's veto on a bill that she did veto that said that farmers needed to be unionized. And so far this month, there are 3 scheduled. One has already happened, one is today, and the next is the 23rd. And so you can see that in between, knowing what the bills are that are in play, not much has happened so far. And it will, with the governor coming out with a supplemental budget, $850 million, and with her state of the state that's going to set the stage, the next 2 months, you're going to find that those issues within the supplemental budget, as well as a few more other bills that you need to be aware of, are going to be front and center. And the other part of it is, as I said, we work very closely with our local and regional chambers to share with them information, to gather from them information. Information really is valuable to you as well, because you get to see what the bills are that's coming up. And if you have questions, you can reach out, and Simon will tell you how to do that in about 1 minute. But I wanted you to know that information is available both of your local and regional chambers. Maybe it's the hot stove, which is very valuable, and I commend Deb and her team for putting that on. Also, we have a briefing every Monday morning for both business and local regional chambers. And we'd invite you because the advocacy team gets to share with you upcoming bills that you need to know about. So with that, there's a lot to say, to learn, and Simon is going to do that. I'm going to introduce him. Right now, Simon West is one of those people, like Shelley is to Bangor, that Simon is to me, that will do anything you ask him and do it extremely well. He's in HR, he's in finance, he's the CEO of our education foundation, and today he is our social media guru that's going to help you better understand how to make that access and how to make a difference. And I leave on this note, as I said, you have no idea how important, how valuable your opinion is to this process. Don't ever take it for granted. It'll make a difference. Simon, it's all yours, buddy.
Well, Dana, thank you very much for that kind introduction. Deb, thank you for having me here today. And everyone that's joining us, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure for me. This morning's theme, and I don't think it can be repeated enough, is that it's very important for you to have the opportunity to have your voice heard in front of the state legislature. The hurdle for a lot of people is just not knowing how to get that process started. So today I would like to work with you to begin to break down that barrier. There are a lot of topics I want to go over, starting with how to search through every bill that has been printed and submitted to a committee, how to search for specific pieces of legislation that you're interested in, how to read a bill and find key identifying factors of it so that you can then see where a public hearing is going to be held, when it will be held, how you can draft testimony, submit testimony, and then find the contact information of key legislators, whether it is your legislator, sponsors of the bill, members of the committee that the bill is being presented in, and leadership in both the House, Senate, and the two major parties. So to get started, I will begin a screen share, and we will go to the main page of the state legislature. Okay, so here we are at legislature.maine.gov. This is the main page that you will want to land on, and it has all the functions you're going to need to get started. So let's begin with how you can go through and look for any bill that has been printed and submitted to a committee to be worked on. From this main page, you're going to want to start with the advanced bill search button. This brings you to the next page here, where on the right-hand side, you see a section where you can search from a certain LD number to a certain LD number, LD standing for the legislative document. And it also gives you a drop-down menu for the legislative session. When you come here, it should automatically be on the legislature that we are in. But if you just want to make sure, you can hit the drop-down, and it gives you the ability to look in the past. But the very bottom one is going to be either the legislature that we're in or the most recent one that occurred. So we will keep it on the 130th. Depending on where we are in the legislature, the session, and when you start this process, there might be one bill ready to go. There could be several hundred. So to make sure the first time you try this, that you capture any bill that has been presented, I like to start with the number 1. And then just hit a number that's high enough that I know I'm going to find everything. So we're going to go 5,000 and hit enter. And it brings us to the next screen where we can see every bill that has been printed out. And if you look at the top right, you can see right now that we're currently looking at 1 to 25 of 1,994 bills that have been printed. Now, I didn't show you this because I think it is an efficient use of your busy time to look through this section week after week. I did it just because I would rather you know how to do something you don't need to do than need to do something and not know how to do it. One of the great advantages of being a chamber member is that when we run into legislation that's important to us and we know it's going to be important to you, we share it in our communications. And these communications typically will have the LD number, the bill title, a synopsis about the bill, and a little bit about why we're getting involved. Through those communications, you can read a little bit about it and then specifically search for the bill, which I'm going to show you next, and you can begin to decide if this is something you would like to engage on. Aside from sharing bills to let you know what we're working on, we also, through our communications, will sometimes do a call to action. This call to action is our request for your help to put pressure on the legislator to let them know what issues are important to us and what issues are very important to you. As Dana stated, we have some incredibly talented advocates who, through their years of experience, have developed relationships with certain legislators, with other key advocates who are very talented, and have created a circle of trust and sharing information and working together to get good outcomes for the business community. But sometimes we need to take it further and get your involvement. This can happen because a bill has very extreme implications, whether good or bad, and we want to make sure that the bill ends the legislature in the right direction. It might be because a bill that we thought was going to have a ton of support and rapidly move through the legislature to the finish line didn't get the momentum we anticipated, and we want your help to get it moving. Or maybe there was a bill that we thought was going to be dead on arrival, wasn't going anywhere, and all of a sudden it sprouted legs and took off. Working with the legislature can be very unpredictable at times, so we run into these issues. The other reason we might ask for your help from time to time throughout the legislature is every once in a while, legislators might forget that the State Chamber of Commerce is not your everyday business interest. We are the united voice of thousands of people that they are in Augusta to work for and to represent. And your faces at public hearings, your voice at the other end of a telephone, your emails in their inbox will play as the reminders they need to recognize that. So with that being said, let's switch gears and look how to look at a specific bill. What we'll want to do is find ourselves back at the main landing page for the Maine legislature. And let's say you're at your office and you're reading through some communications that Deb and her team have put out. And you see, we'll pick on one of my bills because I'm familiar with it. You see that Simon is asking for a call to action on LD 1652, which is a bill that increases the size and the quality of early child care workforce so that current workers who are dealing with child care issues can have those resolved and go back to their employers. If you read the synopsis on that bill and you decide you want to look for it further, you can come to this main page and come to this little box where it says LD number, and you can type in that 1652 and hit enter. It brings you to this next page where you can confirm that you found the right LD number. You can also confirm with the title. It gives you a little bit of information about some actions that have happened with it. This bill I worked on in the last session. It was carried over and I'm going to be seeing it again soon, I believe. The most important button for you here is the one over to the left that says Bill Text and Other Docs. If you click there, it will bring you to the next page. And from here, you can pull up a PDF of the bill, which I will open for us. Now, this is your typical legislative document. They will vary in size, they'll vary in the density of the language, but they're all formatted very similar. So I'm going to go through this with you on the formatting. At the very top, you'll see that it is coded for the legislature that we're currently in, the 130th. This will let you know that you are looking at a legislative document in the correct period of time. The next piece is the legislative document number, or the LD number, 1652. Then the bill title. These two pieces, the bill title and the LD number, are going to be the main indicators that help you identify the bill. The next important piece of information for you to know is the committee that the bill is being sent to. That will be in the next paragraph on the very first page. And here, this bill happens to be referred to the Committee on Innovation, Development, Economic Advancement, and Business. In the next section, we're going to see who the bill sponsor is, the person presenting it, as well as any co-sponsors of a bill. Sometimes bills will only have one sponsor, maybe there will be two, maybe there will be several. It's important to look at who these legislators are because they're the ones that are going to have the greatest stake in seeing this bill through to the finish line. So interactions with them will probably be quite frequent. Further down, we get into the body of the bill. And like I said, they vary in size and density. One of the easiest things to do approach I like is to scroll all the way down to the bottom and get to the bill summary. Some employees in the legislature that help put the bill language together work on the summary, and what they do is they do a great synopsis of the content of the bill, keeping it true to what the bill is, but making it in plain, easy to read language so you can start to develop some context of the bill and make decisions of whether you want to do further research or not. So I'll just quickly go through this again so that we can see it. You have your legislative document number, you have your bill title, you have the committee it's being referred to, you have your sponsors, and then at the very bottom, you have your bill summary. So now that we have seen the LD number, the title, and the committee that it is being referred to, our next step is to figure out, if we've decided we want to engage on this, how do we figure out where we're going to be seeing a public hearing arise and when is that going to happen? So let's go take a look at that. We want to go back to the main page of the state legislative site, and up top in this button here called committees, we'll drop down and go to legislative committees. It brings us to this page where we have a drop down of all the potential committees our bill might be in. And if we remember, our bill that we're working on is in the Innovation, Development, Economic Advancement, and Business. We'll click here and it will bring us to their homepage. Excuse me. So as we look at this page, and there's a lot to it, so I'll go through it slowly. Our first section here is just a calendar. It shows us the week we're in, and it gives us dates, and it lets us know what's happening. In a typical world, these calendars will be produced 2 weeks in advance so that you have some lead time to see what's going to be going on. We're not right now operating in a typical world. So if I hit this button that moves us into the future, you'll see that nothing is scheduled out. But you can use that to look forward in time to see when things are going on. You can also come down to the bottom of the screen here, and there are PDFs of public hearing notices, weekly schedules, and work session notices. So you can look at these and print them out and use them for reference. So what I'll do quickly to show you how that works is we'll click on the public hearing notice. And this is just that calendar in a Word document format. So since my bill that we looked at, LD 1692, or 1652 rather, is not on the schedule, let's just pretend that it is on here. So we're looking at public hearings for Tuesday, February 22nd, and we're going to say our bill is on here. So we know it's the 16th, the public hearing's coming up on the 22nd. Let's draft some testimony. So we'll get out of this section. I'll stop my screen share for a moment, and I will bring us to an example of what testimony looks like. Okay, and up on my screen now is an example of testimony that I drafted for this specific bill. What I've done here is I've highlighted sections that are going to change based on what the bill is, what the committee it's going to is, and of course, since you're not me, you'll want to cater it to you. So we'll start with the first section, where you're going to write, this is the testimony of who you are for the organization you represent, if you're going to be there representing an organization, in either support, opposition, neither support or oppose. The committee will want you to designate the direction of your testimony, how you're going to testify on it. You'll want to list the bill number, the bill title, and the date that you'll be submitting this testimony. The next section, you want to do a polite reference to the chairs and the members of the committee. When we go back into the committee site, I'll show you who to see who those are. But here we have Senator Curry, Representative Roberts. You will have a chair from the Senate and from the House on each committee. The next section, you again will repeat who you are. This time you will state where you are from, who you're representing if it's an organization, a very brief snapshot of that organization. Again, which direction you're going, if it's support or oppose, the LD number and the bill title. And then here in the body, you will draft your testimony. This is where you get to give your argument, your opinion, give them statistics, any information that you feel is necessary to share, remembering that you only have 3 minutes to do so. And then at the bottom, a brief thank you for the opportunity to provide written testimony. When you testify in person, you would just say thank you for the opportunity to testify. So briefly, top section, a little bit about you, who you're representing, what you're supporting or opposing, the chairs, the committee, again, a little bit about yourself, the bill, your position, the body, and a thank you. So now that we've drafted our testimony, we figured out when we're going to do it, it's time to submit the written testimony and get ourselves scheduled to testify virtually or in person, depending on what world we're working in. So I will stop the screen share of my example, and we will go back to the state website. So let me just bring us back to the main page so I can show you, run through how to get back there. So to submit your testimony, we again will go back to committees. We'll go to legislative committees. We'll pick the committee that is working with our bill. And then, as I said in the example of testimony, you want to have a polite greeting to your chairs and the members that sit on the committee. Down here on each committee's site, there's the members and staff section. You'll see it begins with Senator Curry, chair, the senators that are on it, Representative Roberts, chair, and the representatives that are on it. And since the legislature is made up of essentially this proportion of senators and representatives, fewer senators with larger districts, more representatives with smaller districts, the committees are representative of the makeup of the entire body of the legislature. So now that you know who you're going to be putting on the testimony, we can come back up. And there is a section here titled Testimony Submission. You will click on that and it will bring you to the next page where you will want to be sure that you are clicking on testifying for a public hearing. Again, it's going to ask you to choose the committee that you're going to be presenting in front of. So we want to go to the IDEA Committee, Innovation, Development, Economic Advancement, and Business. And we want to remember the date, which was February 22nd. And in this section, it shows all of the bills that are going to have a public hearing that day. You might find yourself in a position that you want to testify on more than one. You have to do this process individually for each bill. You cannot select more than one at a time. So we'll just go with the top one, which is my stand-in for 1652. At this point, you could just submit your written testimony. If you don't feel that you're going to be able to make it to testify in person or virtually, you could do that. But if you want to make the impact of hearing your voice heard Here, having your face seen, you would want to select, I would like to present my testimony live. And from here, to parallel with your intention and what you've written on your testimony, you would want to select either you are for the legislation, against the legislation, neither for nor against. So with us, we'll select we're for this legislation. You then would hit choose file and then upload it like you would an attachment to an email. You fill out this section here with your first name, last name, either where you're from if you're just testifying as a citizen, or the organization you represent if you're going to testify on an organization's behalf. You put in the email address that you're going to want to receive the Zoom link to, because this is how you're going to get the invitation to testify. You then confirm it and you put your phone number in here. Your phone number they might use to let you know if any major changes have happened, but this is really intended that if you're going to join the Zoom meeting over the phone, they want your phone number so they can verify who you are. You just hit I'm not a robot, submit, and then it goes to the legislative offices. And within a few minutes, you're going to get an email that confirms that you sent it. You'll get a follow-up email that gives you the link. The day that you testify, you would click on that link that made it to your email, and the process will begin where it looks like you're just taking an inactive participant's view of the public hearing. You will be able to watch the proceedings, but you won't be able to participate until it's your turn. One of the reasons here they're asking if you're going to be for, against, or neither is the people in line waiting are put in line in those categories. So everyone that's for is going to go in a line together, then they'll switch to against, then they'll switch to neither for nor against. When it becomes your turn, your screen will flip. You'll suddenly see yourself on the Zoom, and you'll be able to begin your testimony once you've been introduced. Once you're done your testimony, your screen will flip again, and now you'll just be watching and you'll have no ability to interact. So here we've talked about how to find any bill, how to find a specific bill, how to find the key identifiers in a bill, look up when a public hearing is going to happen, how to draft testimony, how to submit it. Now let's look at how you can find key legislators, whether they be yours, how the sponsors, the committee members, or leadership. The easiest way to do that is to get ourselves back to the main page here. We'll just quickly go home. And let's say the first thing you want to do is see who your senator is. We'll go to the Senate button, go to the Senate home. We'll do a find your senator. And here you have some alphabetical options. Since we're in Bangor, let's go to B. And we're going to find Bangor right here, Joseph Baldacci. We can click on him. And here's his profile. And here is contact information and how to get a hold of him if you choose to do so. Now we can go and repeat the process in the House and see who your reps are. We'll go to House Home. We'll come over to Find Your Representative. Click on Representatives. Here we have quite a few options of how to search. Easiest way for us here is to go to the Alpha Town listing. Again, we'll click on B for Bangor, and here we see that you have 4 different options for who your representative could be. What you could do is go through them and view their profiles and start making phone calls to figure out who is yours, or if you like to look at maps, you could also look at the map options and figure out where your location is in this person's district. For me, I would make the phone calls. That's the approach that I would take. And then this process can be repeated if you know the names of the sponsors of the bill and the committee members of the bill, you would repeat this exact process. If we want to go find who the leadership is, we will go back to the home page of the Maine legislature. Let's start with the Senate again. We'll click on Senate. We'll go to Senate Home. We can then go to Senate offices and leadership. Here we have the office of the Secretary of the Senate President, Democratic Majority Office, Republican Minority Office. There's basic information about them here. You can also open it up to see who they are, a little bit about them, their staff, and how to get a hold of them. The process can also be repeated for the House. Go to House Home, go back to Find Your Representative. And then on this side, we want to look at House leadership. And here you are, Speaker of the House, House Majority Office, the Democrats, Majority Leader, Assistant Majority Leader, House Minority, the Republicans, House Republican Leader, Assistant Republican Leader. And you can view all of their profiles to see the important information about them. So we've looked at looking up bills, finding when a public hearing will occur, drafting testimony, submitting testimony, and seeing who specific key legislators are that would be useful in contacting when you're working on a specific piece of legislation. So I think we've covered everything that I was hoping to go over with you, and I would like to turn it back over to Deb and see if we have any questions that I can hopefully answer for you. Thank you.
Simon, this was excellent. I learned, I've submitted testimony in the past, and I learned some new things, especially how to use the search function. This was so good. Shelley and I have been texting. We're recording this. We're YouTubing this. We're going to get this out. Every Maine student in civics classes should watch this. You did a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
Amazing. So thank you so much. I do have a few questions. These aren't in any particular order, but one of the things that Dana touched on and that we discussed was the fact that we're all very busy people. And yes, it is easier when you can testify on Zoom because you don't have the drive time from wherever you are to and from Augusta. But at the same time, you do have to wait for your turn in a Zoom hearing. And I've had situations personally where I didn't know when my turn was coming up and I needed a snack and I was afraid to leave my desk. How are committees managing that? Do they let you know when your turn will be coming up? And what if you find yourself in a situation where you've signed up to testify, you're in the hearing, but you just have to go, and you don't want them to call your name and you're not there anymore? Do you have any insight in terms of how you manage those circumstances?
Sure. So the way that works is the committee will typically say how many people have arrived to testify. So you can take that number and know that typically people are only allowed 3 minutes. So you'll know essentially, as long as there aren't too many questions and there isn't a whole lot of discussion going on, which does happen, you can start to make a guess at how long this will take. And you know the stance you're taking. So they'll tell you the order that this is going to go in, if they're going to start with the fours and then move to the opposed. And you should be able to know how many people are in each category. So it will allow you to have an educated guess on how long it will be before you get to go. You won't know that you're number 1 out of 5 in a particular category, but you'll at least know that you're 1 of 5 and that could take 15 minutes for that block, and you could be anywhere within that 15 minutes. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot I could tell you about how exactly you would figure out when your turn would be occurring.
Thank you. And if you do find that something happens and you just have to exit, can you send an email to the committee, or I forget the exact title, but each committee has an administrative person.
Sure. Yeah, there are staffers that are going to be there that actually run the public hearing because the legislators themselves don't do that. You can reply to the same email that you were sent where you got the link. And you had already submitted your written testimony ahead of time. So leaving and not having your physical voice heard doesn't negate the fact that you did submit written testimony and that someone will read what you had to say.
Perfect. And do they read it? Oftentimes, again, I know we've got a bill coming up where we want to submit testimony, but I'm just not able to testify. And Dana made the point that it might not be as effective, but it does count, and it
Yes.
does go on the public record, correct, Dana Simon?
That is absolutely correct. I don't want to leave the impression that it doesn't matter for sure. I think you said it well. It does matter whether it's written or whether it's in person presented. The face, seeing you is extremely important, but most committee members are very conscientious and will read the testimony. So it's extremely important. One way or another, your voice will be recognized and your position will be noted.
And I've also been in hearings where, and this is a question for either one of you, much of the testimony was sort of rinse and repeated. Yep. And the committee chair finally said, unless you have something new or different to add, we will take your written testimony, but we won't ask you to testify, because it was a long hearing. And I think that really speaks to the point that's been made about crafting testimony that tells your story. They want to hear about it. How is this going to affect your business? How is this, what is the real impact, the real effect of this to you, and make it unique to you, correct?
Oh, you're so correct in that. I think that we sometimes, I guess the word would be overthink and try to be so formal, when some of the most effective testimony in person is really speaking from the heart. You are somebody that lives with an issue, you understand the issue, you know its impact, and just standing up in your jeans or flannel shirt, which isn't often, but I say that to make a point, is that person who says, I presented written testimony, it is similar, I just want you to know that it's important to me, and here's why it's important. So you're doing a little bit of ad-libbing, but I can tell you from experience that really truly does matter. And quite often you look at the committee, they may be preoccupied, they're probably listening, but they're preoccupied. When you speak from the heart and you speak with sincerity, they stop the work and they listen. Extremely important.
And it doesn't have to be 3 minutes.
No, it doesn't have to be 3 minutes. The other thing I would point out, and two things, is that you're right. Now you know why I place such a high premium on Simon. He does everything as equally well as he just did during this presentation. But it may appear to be more complicated, but once you do it, it's no longer complicated. And you have recorded this. So if any part of it you need to revisit, you've got it right there to review. But like I said, and I repeat, once you do it, the future times are the very same, and you get so quickly adjusted to what you have to do that there is a wealth of opportunity in what Simon has presented today. And whether you may have forgotten a little bit of it, go to the website, go to the recording, and it'll prove to be invaluable.
And also, I know I've reached out to, you mentioned, Simon, that every committee has a staff person assigned to that committee, and they're very helpful. Is it appropriate and a good use of their time if you want to submit testimony, you want to testify, and you have a question, to reach out to that individual who's listed there on the website?
Yes, I think it's certainly appropriate to do that. Whatever questions you have, whether it's a question about the bill, whether it's a question about the schedule, you could even, after you submit testimony and have a question about a work session that's coming up and how the bill came out of work session, if it hasn't been published on the website yet, you can get a hold of them and ask them questions about that. Any question you have, I think you could go to their committee staff members and get an answer.
Yeah, I find they're really helpful, and I can't imagine the task and the job that they have to perform every day. We have a couple of questions that came in, excellent questions. How far in advance do you need to submit your testimony in order to testify? And we're finding, as you know, a lot of these hearings, there isn't a whole lot of lead time. But if there's a public hearing tomorrow, is it too late for me to submit testimony today?
You have 30 minutes ahead of the public hearing to submit your testimony.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Another question, I'm assuming if you choose to testify live, this is a good one, you have to read what you have written, that you can't change or update what you had submitted in writing.
So if you don't have to read exactly what you wrote. One thing you can do, if you write testimony that is not going to be a 3-minute speech, as long as you are bringing up the same points and you are in the same position, whether it be support or oppose, you can cater what you're going to say to be that 3 minutes or shorter, or bring up new points that you didn't put in your testimony. And one of the ways that you can know that legislators have read what you wrote is they might ask you questions about something that you wrote that you didn't talk about when you presented. So no, you do not have to word for word go through what you wrote.
Right.
That's important, Deb. That's a very good question, and Simon hit it on the head, because quite frankly, 3 minutes, you'd be surprised how quickly it goes. And there may be a point within that testimony that would exceed the 3 minutes, a testimony would, that you really want to emphasize. And those 3 minutes become that opportunity to emphasize the key points. And that's when you're kind of ad-libbing to the point, but you're doing it and your sincerity will show.
And you can say, and correct me if I'm wrong, you do have my written testimony. And especially if you're later on in the queue of people testifying, and you can say, I also oppose or support this bill for
Yes.
many of the reasons that have been stated, but I want to just add one more thing from my point of view. Yes, you don't have to read it verbatim. They have it.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to stay on the testimony topic for a few minutes, but then we do have some questions about engaging and contacting your representatives. Simon, would it be possible for you to show us where you can find the testimony that's been submitted on a bill? Because I think this is really helpful information, especially bills that are still in play, bills that have been carried over from session to session, or if you want to just look at some examples of what testimony looks like, your testimony becomes public record, and you can actually see. And I find it helpful to see, if I testify on a bill, who else is testifying along with me in opposition and support. Could you find that for us?
Sure, I will go back to sharing my screen with you. And so we're back here at the House leadership. Let's get back to the main page. So let's pick on my bill again and go back to this area. Let's see. We go back to bill text and other documents, and then let's see here. Then there's a testimony tab. You click on that testimony tab. And testimony again. Oh, testimony to committees. There we go. All right, I am so sorry. Let me run through that again, because that was really choppy. So we're back on this page where you would be able to look at the bill itself. You would drop down to testimony, then testimony to committees. And then here is a list of organizations that the committees where testimony has been submitted. Click here. All right. Let me back up. This is not working as smoothly as I remember it. So let's go to something more current.
Don't feel bad, Simon. I know every time I do this, it takes me a couple of tries to find the testimony on bills. So
It has been a little bit since I've looked up other people's testimony. So if we come back to the page where we were looking for when a public hearing would occur, this brings us, let's see if this brings us to the testimony that's been. Here we go. Okay. All right. Coming back to me. So down at the bottom of the schedule is committee papers. When you look down, it will show you bills that have testimony attached to them, and it will tell you how many items of testimony. So you would find the bill that you're looking for, hit that plus button, and there it will give you the names and organizations of people that have submitted testimony, which you can then click on, and it brings you to their testimony. So that is how it would be done. So you go to the page where you would be looking for when a public hearing would come up. You would go down to the all committee papers at the very bottom of the schedule, expand it, look for a bill that has been scheduled or already occurred, and then you would just expand the testimony items and be able to click on the person and their organization. So sorry it took me a bit to get there, but that's how you do that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That makes us feel better about ourselves, Simon, when we get lost in there too. There is a way to find it. It was really helpful because I forgot how to do that myself. So let's talk about contacting representatives, and we only have a few minutes left. So if you have a question, please put it up through the Q&A, or if you're joining us on Facebook, we'd love to hear your comments or message us. But we can't stress enough how important it is to develop those relationships with the people who represent you. You voted for them. They're there to work for you. And I know you hear it all the time, Dana and Simon. I hear it all the time. We want to hear from you. I hear it from representatives all the time, senators, legislators, our congressional delegation. It matters. So this question is really good. When you call your representatives, what should you say? How do you engage in conversation, or do you just let them know where you stand on a bill? If you're not comfortable with this, how do you kind of open that dialogue? Dana, I'll start with you.
No, I think there is no magic to it. I mean, if you know the person well, it makes it so easy because you can just talk about things that are relevant to the two of you, and then say, oh, by the way, Bill, I really want to talk with you about this bill. I'm really troubled, and here's why, or I really support it, and here's why. If it's somebody you don't know, they are a legislator, and they'll appreciate the fact that you call, and it can be as simple as saying, we'll use the same name but a different bill. Hey, Representative Martin, I appreciate the opportunity to reach out to you, but I have a concern with the bill, and I just wanted to make you aware of it because of the impact it has on what I do and my people, and proceed. I mean, there isn't a magic formula. The more that you can make it relatable and personal to your impact, it'll work. I wouldn't worry about how to approach it. I'd approach it with a personal touch and not a strident touch, but I think you know that already.
Yeah, and you don't have to be an expert.
No, not at all.
You can take it from another angle and say, hi, I'm Dana. I run an auto dealership, and I'm really having workforce issues, and part of the challenge is childcare.
Exactly.
So what are you working on to solve that problem?
Yep. And that's a good point, because it doesn't have to be something that's already in play and you're trying to influence it. It can be something that is important to you that you're not quite sure where it is. And that person may not know either, but they'll get back to you. I can guarantee you that, because that's important for them. That constituency work is key to their success, and they will place a high emphasis on it. I also want to mention one thing very quickly, because I know of time. In our world, like in sports, defense is probably stronger sometimes than offense. And what I mean by that is that most of what you've heard here today is to how to get your voice into the mix, either for or against something that's already in play. But let's say that your chamber has an issue that you want to put forward that you're not sure where it is, and you probably know that it isn't in play. Well, the process is very similar, and make it as simple as possible. Maybe you have an idea of what that is, and you can put it kind of in language that your legislator or somebody that you know is in the legislative process would take that. They would continue to work with you as well as a revisor's office that creates a language specific to what you want to accomplish. And then you get various sponsors to back it up. But there's also the opportunity to create something, I call it offense, rather than stopping or approving something already in play. That's not, we use that on occasion, and it really begins with common sense. You put on paper what you want, you approach a legislator that you've got great confidence that you know will do he or she will do their best to sell it. You get other sponsors, they'll take it to the revisor's office, and before you know, you're in play.
Right. That's really good. And I've also heard from legislators who appreciate it when a business invites them to their business.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be during the session. It can be any time during the year, because you then you develop that relationship. They understand your business. You become a resource to them. Because just like us, nobody's an expert on everything. So they're dealing with, it could be thousands of bills a session.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that they can go to you as a business owner and say, hey, how does this affect you? What would this look like in your business? So developing those relationships is important. And that's something that they ask us all the time is, please tell your members to invite me to see them.
Extremely valuable.
Very important. One other thing I want to mention, this is kind of in the weeds, Simon, but there is on the Senate page and the legislature page, a general email and a general phone number. So if you have a comment or you want to provide input on a bill, is that an option? And do those messages actually get to your representative? If you don't want to call them directly, or you're in a hurry and you just want to leave a message.
Sure, that is a resource you could use if you don't have the time or you do not wish to pinpoint a legislator in particular. You could connect with one of the legislative bodies and leave your concerns in a general message, and they will reach the appropriate party.
Okay, good to know. So that's another way to connect. I just want to mention Hot Stove, and I appreciate the mention of that, Dana and Simon. That is an event that the Bangor Region Chamber puts on one Saturday morning a month during the legislative session. Our next one is March 12th. It's a virtual event, so you can join us from anywhere. Bring your coffee. You don't even have to get out of your pajamas. It's fine. And what's great about it is you have an opportunity to engage with policymakers at the local level, the state level, and the federal level. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a legislator say to me, I learned something at Hot Stove today that I had not considered when taking a position on this particular bill, and I've changed my mind about it because of one thing they heard or one conversation. It matters. And so we offer that. We encourage you to participate, and the Maine State Chamber offers a lot of opportunities as well for you to engage. So work with your chambers. We all try to give you as many opportunities as possible to do that. As we wrap up, Simon, again, you need to add teaching to your list of many talents. That was incredible. Thank you again so much. Anything else that you want to mention, Simon, that we didn't cover? Anything that you want to reiterate? And then I'll turn it over to Dana.
Well, Deb, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here and present this morning. I don't have anything that I would add that hasn't been covered yet, but I would say that if you have questions and you want to reach out either to me or someone else at the State Chamber please feel free to do so. That's why we're here.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I would add to that again to say that we thank you so much, Deb, and all of you who are part of this, for the opportunity to share this information and to be a part of this event today. I would also end in the very same way that I began my comments, and that is there is no substitute for the value that each and every one of you bring to the legislative process. Please don't take that for granted. Please don't forget it. And please add your voice to the rest of ours to make Maine a more competitive and better place. And that is something we all agree on. So thank you again.
Well said. Thank you both, Dana Connor, Simon West from the Maine State Chamber. Thank you to our sponsor, Eaton Peabody, Shelley Sun, our Director of Marketing and Events, for producing this event today. We have recorded this, so we are going to be sending this out to our membership, to our delegation, and I'm sure the State Chamber will also make this available. So this is a great resource that many people can benefit from. Thank you so much for this. And one final word to legislators.